name's Hope. Welcome to Hopefully Here. Super stoked to have you. And today we're talking family drama. Books that are just full of all the family messiness, and it's just something I really enjoy reading. So we're going to start with a book that I actually just read and just did a video on, The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. Wasn't my cup of tea necessarily, as you will see from said video, but I do know a lot of people really enjoyed it, and it is definitely a family drama. It follows Dickie, Melda, Cass, and PJ, mom, dad, daughter, son, and they're going through a lot of different things, keeping secrets, trying to figure things out, and it gets a lot messy actually, and it is definitely a very big book, but it only follows the one generation, which I find interesting because with a lot of big books you're following multiple generations, and this just follows one, but it is family drama to the nth degree, and I think that there are a lot of people that really like it, so definitely a family drama book. Sticking to big chunky books, we have The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanonne Jeffers. And this is a multi-generational book. It follows, just decades and decades and generations of this family. It's about Eileen, who decides to start researching her family, and she is dealing with a lot of issues on her own. And as she looks back at her family, she realizes kind of maybe where some generational trauma has impacted the way her life has been shaped. And it is really just about family and identity, and that's what a lot of these are going to be about. But this one goes back so far and covers so many generations, and how something traumatic can really impact decades after that traumatic thing has happened. And it's a really exceptionally well done book, really big, but it reads well. It kind of sort of reminds me just a little bit in that it's kind of unrelenting at times. Reminds me a little bit of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Not in any topic, but it does cover some of the same really big, hard-hitting issues: addiction, assault, all those big things that you would expect in a multi-generational saga. This one definitely hits, and it's done very well. A book that I just read, When God Was a Rabbit by Sarah Winman, follows the sibling relationship of Ellie and Joe through about 4 decades of time. It starts with their kids and goes until later on in life, and it's such a beautiful look at sibling relationship and the love you can have and the secrets you can keep from each other and for each other. Sarah Winman has got to be one of my favorite authors. She's written some incredible books, and this is definitely one that I absolutely adored. It's not very long, but it packs a punch, and it was her debut novel, so it's been out for quite a while, but it is definitely a lovely look at sibling relationships and how they develop over time, and I absolutely adored it. Continuing with the sibling relationships, we have Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. This follows 4 siblings from the Padavano family. You have Julia, Sylvie, Cecilia, and Emmeline, and you're focusing, I think, kind of mostly on Julia and Sylvia. And Julia meets this boy, William, and they start something, and then things really shift, and the importance and the ties with your siblings and how a decision can really sever the dynamic between the 4 girls. That's what the book is about, and it's a really great look at that bond, that sibling bond. It's hard to break sometimes, even when a decision is made that could or should shatter that relationship, and I really enjoyed it. I myself have 4 siblings. I have 3 sisters and a brother, and there was just something about the way these relationships were written that I could really relate to, and it's a very well done book. The first one I've ever read by Anne Napolitano, but I think that she's written a few quite popular ones. I don't know much about them, but she's a very good writer, and her relationships were impeccable. Let's talk about Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. This book was up for the Women's Prize in Fiction, I believe, 2 years ago maybe, but people really, really liked it. I enjoyed it. Wasn't my favorite or anything, but it's definitely a family drama. So you follow Hazel, her daughters Miriam and August, and then you focus on her granddaughter Joan. And the book starts with Joan, Miriam, and Maya, the other daughter, escaping from an abusive, Miriam's husband is abusive, and they're running away and they're moving to Memphis to be with the family. And it's about, again, just how generational trauma can really impact a life without you even realizing it. And you go back in time, it covers about 7 decades of time. So you do follow Hazel as she ages, and then Miriam and August, and how they were impacted by things that impacted Hazel, and then the same thing with Joan. And then Joan becomes really, she starts to lean on art as a source of comfort and a source of therapy, sort of, and how her actions may actually start to sever kind of this generational trauma. And it's a really good look at what art can do and how art can heal, but also how you get to that point of needing it. And it was a really good book, and I know that a lot of people absolutely loved it off of the Women's Prize. So definitely, if you're into that more heart-tugging sort of family drama, it's definitely a book worth picking up. Another really popular book that deals with family drama is The Vanishing Half, and this is about 2 twin girls, the Vignes, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, twins, this is the last name, and it's about how one, they are estranged, and one passes for white and the other doesn't, and has a daughter who is very black, very dark, and ultimately over time the daughters become connected, and just about kind of the fallout from that, but also how these 2 women ended up living such different lives and choosing such different paths. It's a really interesting look at, it's about 4 decades, I think it goes from the 1950s to the 1990s, and so obviously there's a lot of discussion about racism and colonialism and choosing a path where you're really hiding a pretty key important part of yourself and why you would make that decision. But it's very good, and there's a reason it's really popular. Definitely worth picking up. Another book about siblings that end up on very different paths, we have Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is one of my favorite books of the year so far. You're following Effa and Essie. Yes, Effa and Essie, and they are half siblings. They don't know each other exists. Effa ends up married to a British slave owner, and Essie ends up being sold into slavery. And so their lives take very different paths, and you start with them, and then you're following the generations that follow them, and then how they end up converging. And it's fascinating. It covers a lot of ground in a small amount of time, so the pace is pretty quick in the writing, and I liked that. But you do still get a sense of the trauma that follows them, and how, again, generations before you come up, you're still dealing with the fallout of a traumatic event from generations before, and maybe that healing process over time. It's really fascinating. Next, we have Hope and Glory by Janelle Benson. Jandela Benson. And this follows Glory, who has a brother Victor, a sister Faith, and her mother's name is Celeste. Glory has been in LA. She comes back to the UK after her father dies, and she starts to ask questions about these memories she has as a child, and it definitely turns up some messy family drama that is a little unexpected, but also it shows the secrets that her family is keeping from her, and it's a really, really interesting book. Her brother isn't talking to her because she didn't come to his trial. He's in jail. Her sister is really irritated with her. Her mother's not dealing well with the death of their father. It gets very messy very quickly, but it all does get wrapped up fairly well at the end. So definitely a book that it's got a good ending and a really interesting story. We have Olga Dies Dreaming by, I cannot pronounce that. no idea how that is said. And this is about Olga and Pedro. Olga is a wedding planner. Pedro is her brother. He is a politician. And what happens is their mother was a radical political activist and is like on wanted lists and stuff. And she abandoned her kids when they were younger to go do this. And she's now back in the picture. And it's how that all unfolds. I liked this one. You do follow both of the siblings in this, and then you see kind of what happened to their parents along the way and how they're dealing with that. Particularly, Pedro is a politician himself and his mother is a wanted political activist. So that's a really interesting dynamic. But this was kind of an unexpected one. It was one I picked up on a whim from the library. I don't know that I've heard a lot of people talking about it, but it's definitely full of family drama mess. Next up, The Arsonist City by Hillel Organ. I love this book so much. So you're following the family Mazna and Isra, Mazna and Idris, yes, are the mom and dad, and then they have 3 children, Ava, Mimi, and Naj. And I just gotta check, there's so many names. And Ava, Mimi, and Naj are essentially American. Their parents, mom is Syrian and dad is Lebanese. And what happens is their dad decides that he's going to sell the house that they have in Beirut. So they all come back and they're trying to convince him not to sell. You jump back and forth between the love story, or the love story of Mazna and Idris, and then what their children are going through in the present. And it is so good. Alian writes really great family relationships, and she's also very good at discussing what it is to be taken from your homeland and kind of dispersed, and how the kids are American but the parents really aren't. It's so good. She also wrote Salt House, and I liked that as well, but The Arsonist City is by far one of my favorite books. I absolutely love it, and I think everybody should read it. And then finally we have Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Akuyasi. This was up for the longlisted. She was longlisted for the Scotiabank Giller Prize a couple years ago, and this is about 3 Nigerian women. Mom's name is Kambirinachi, and then her 2 children are Kalind and Tai. And I don't know that I'm pronouncing any of those names correctly, but it's about how they've all drifted from each other. There were problems. They just don't talk, but under different circumstances they all end up back in Lagos, and it's about how they need to reform their relationships with each other, and it's just really, really well done. It's also a fairly small book, and I just really enjoyed it. So there you have it, family drama books, which, as I said, totally appropriate for holiday times because who doesn't love, a little bit of family drama alongside their turkey. Anyways, I hope you guys all having great days. If you're still here, please hit that subscribe button, hit a like. I really appreciate it. I'm at 16 followers right now. Would love to get to 20, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.